She walked 20 miles to work every single day without complaint, without help, just quiet determination. When her billionaire boss secretly followed her one evening, he never expected to uncover a story that would change both of their lives forever. What he found at the end of that journey wasn't just shocking. It sparked a chain of events that would make headlines around the world and restore your faith in humanity. Sit back, grab some popcorn, and let this unforgettable story unfold. The sun had not yet risen, but Olivia was already on the road. She was 25 years old, with quiet eyes and a soft smile that made strangers feel warm, even if they didn't know her name. Her slippers were thin from use, and the hem of her faded dress brushed against the dusty path as she walked. Every morning, Olivia left her small, worn-down home in the far corners of town and walked 20 long miles to her job at a fancy supermarket inside one of the biggest malls in the city. Most people would have called it madness, but for Olivia, it was simply what needed to be done. She walked with purpose, even though her legs sometimes felt like they would give out. She walked through heat, through early morning cold, and sometimes through rain. Because every step mattered. Every shift she worked helped pay for her mother's medicine. Every naira she saved brought her mother, Mama Rose, a little closer to better days. Mama Rose had once been strong, a lively woman who sold fruit and sang loudly in the mornings. But when Olivia's father passed away suddenly, things changed. Their small family, which had once been average and happy, fell apart faster than they could understand. Bills piled up. Olivia had to drop out of school. Her dreams of becoming a nurse faded quickly when her mother fell ill. She went from classrooms to shop counters, from books to baskets, but she never complained. Each day, Olivia greeted the world with a smile. She greeted customers with kindness, always polite, always calm. Her co-workers often wondered how she stayed so cheerful when they knew she had so little. But Olivia never talked about her struggles. Her pain stayed hidden beneath her quiet laughter and the way she always offered to help with extra shifts. At home, Mama Rose would wait for her at the door, thin, wrapped in a shawl, with a face full of love and eyes full of worry. "You're working too hard, my daughter," she would say softly, brushing Olivia's dusty hair from her face. And Olivia would always answer with the same gentle words, "As long as you're alive and smiling, Mama, I'm strong enough." That evening, and after returning home, Olivia sat beside her mother, helping her drink warm pap and chatting about simple things. How a baby cried in the store, how someone bought mangoes in bulk. They laughed. It was soft laughter, tired but real. When Mama Rose fell asleep, Olivia lay down beside her and stared at the ceiling. She whispered a silent prayer for strength, then closed her eyes. Because in a few short hours she would have to start the long walk again. The next morning came quickly. The sky was still pale when Olivia reached the supermarket. Her legs were sore and her back ached slightly, but she pushed through as always. A soft smile touched her lips as she stepped into the brightly lit store, tied her apron neatly, and began her shift. She moved quietly through the aisles, straightening cans, wiping down surfaces, and restocking shelves. To customers, she was just another worker in uniform, but to those who paid attention, she stood out. There was something about her way of moving, her gentleness, that made people feel seen. Mid-morning, while arranging packs of rice near the meat section, Olivia noticed an elderly woman standing still, staring at a tray of beef. The woman, dressed in a faded wrapper and head tie, held a small shopping basket in one hand. On the other hand, she clutched her purse tightly, looking at the price tag over and over again. She sighed softly, then returned the beef to the chilled shelf. Olivia paused for a moment, watching her. Then she walked over. "Good morning, Ma," she greeted warmly. "Do you need help?" The old woman looked at her and tried to smile. "Ah, my daughter, I was just looking. Meat is so expensive now." Olivia followed her gaze to the tray. It was a modest cut of beef, nothing special, but to someone counting every penny, it clearly meant too much. Without hesitating, Olivia picked it up and dropped it into the woman's basket. "Don't worry, Ma. Let me take care of it," she said, still smiling. "Ah, no, my dear," the woman said, eyes wide. "I can't let you do that. You don't know me. It's okay, I just want to help, Olivia replied quietly. We all need someone sometimes. The woman stared at her for a long moment, then slowly nodded, emotion filling her eyes. God will bless you, my daughter, she said, voice trembling. You'll marry a good man, someone who will see this kind heart. Olivia laughed gently. Amen, Ma, from your mouth to God's ears. The woman reached out and held her hand for a moment. Thank you. And next time I come, maybe you can help me shop again? I'd love to, Olivia said sincerely. Just ask for Olivia. From across the aisle, standing behind a tall display of cereal boxes, a man watched quietly. Henry Brown, owner of the entire Brown Group and the mall itself, had stopped by the supermarket unannounced that morning. He wasn't dressed like a billionaire. Simple polo shirt, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low. Most of the staff wouldn't have recognized him even if they looked him in the face. But his eyes weren't focused on shelves or sales. They were fixed on Olivia. He had seen the entire interaction, the way she noticed the old woman, how she didn't hesitate to give, even though he could tell she didn't have much to spare. Interesting, he murmured under his breath. There was something about her, something real, something he hadn't seen in a long time. Henry Brown wasn't the kind of man people easily forgot. Tall, sharp-featured, and always calm, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to prove anything. In his late 20s, Henry was the youngest CEO in the Brown family's long history of business. He ran the Brown Group, a large company with many branches, including the mall where Olivia worked in. Most women who met Henry called him a dream. Handsome, intelligent, rich, but behind his sharp suits and strong jawline was a man who had grown tired of empty smiles. Henry had seen too many people pretend to love, only to chase after his money or his name. It made him cautious, careful. Relationships were never his focus. Love, he had nearly given up on that. But that morning at the supermarket, something shifted. He hadn't even planned to stop by. He was just doing a quiet internal review with his assistant, checking on new plans for expansion. But as he walked through the aisles in plain clothes, just trying to blend in, he saw her. He didn't know her name yet, but her quiet kindness spoke louder than words. There was a grace about her, not loud, not showy, just real. Henry found himself standing there longer than planned, watching her smile, hearing the soft amen she laughed after the woman's blessing. It wasn't just what she did, it was the way she did it, gently, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. As he left the store, his assistant whispered, "Sir, are we still heading to the site office?" Henry nodded slowly, his eyes still glancing back toward the supermarket. "Yes. But I want to make a few more unscheduled visits over the next few weeks. Quietly." His assistant gave a small smile but said nothing more. He knew his boss well enough not to ask unnecessary questions. And so it began. Henry started visiting the mall more often, never in a suit, never drawing attention. He'd walk by the supermarket, sometimes stop for a snack at the food court just across from the glass windows that faced her section. Each time he'd find her, bending over to stack boxes, smiling as she helped a customer, wiping her forehead quietly when no one was looking. He noticed everything. How she offered to help older shoppers without being asked. How she stayed back after closing to clean without complaint, making sure the elderly cleaners didn't have to do too much work. How she always carried a calm, almost peaceful expression, even when others were grumbling about the heat or long hours. She reminded him of something pure, something his world of meetings, deadlines, and designer watches had lost. Still, he didn't approach her, not yet. He wasn't even sure why he kept coming back. But something about her, her simplicity, her strength, was slowly drawing him in. 3 days later, it was past sunset. The lights inside the mall had begun to dim, and most shoppers had gone home. The air was cooler now, softer, with a gentle breeze that carried the smell of roasted corn from nearby street stalls. From the corner of the parking lot, Henry stood quietly, watching Olivia remove her apron and tuck it into her small backpack. She looked tired, her steps slower than usual, her shoulders slightly slumped. But still, She smiled and waved goodnight to the security guard as she exited the mall's rear gate. Henry hesitated for a moment, then followed her. He had told his driver earlier, "Go on without me, I'll call you later." He needed to see something. He wasn't sure what, but something in his chest told him he needed to understand her story. Not just the part he saw inside the supermarket, but the parts hidden behind her smile. So he followed. From a short distance, he watched as Olivia walked down a narrow side street, far from the bus stops or taxi stands most workers used. Her pace was steady, even as the city noise faded and the streets turned rough and uneven. Soon they reached the edge of the town, where bright lights turned into flickering bulbs and sidewalks disappeared into patches of grass and stone. She crossed puddles from an earlier rain, stepped around open gutters, and kept walking. No car, no bike, no one by her side. Just a young woman alone in the dark, walking. Henry's heart grew heavier with every step. It was over an hour now, and still she didn't stop. His polished shoes were already dusty. His legs ached and sweat clung to the back of his shirt. But Olivia walked on, as though this path was as normal as brushing her teeth. Then he saw it. Her home. It was a small, crumbling building tucked behind a row of broken fences. A dim oil lamp flickered through the window. The house looked tired, like it was held up by hope alone. Henry stood frozen, hidden behind a mango tree on the corner. This was where she lived? She could barely afford comfort, and yet she had offered to buy meat for a stranger just a few days back. That's when it hit him. She didn't do that for herself. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't looking for praise. Then why? Why was she walking such a long distance? Was she saving money to survive? Was she underpaid? Was someone extorting her? So many questions rushed through Henry's mind all at once, each heavier than the last. He stared at the cracked walls and the curtain barely hanging over the window. And then he thought of her again, her laughter, her patience with customers, the way she knelt to help people without blinking like someone who did not have her own struggles. But she was struggling quietly, and no one seemed to notice. The weight of what he had just seen sat heavily on his chest. He couldn't walk back now. He didn't even want to try. Henry pulled out his phone and dialed. "Come pick me," he said quietly to his driver. As he waited by the roadside, he called his assistant Thomas. "Thomas," he said. "Yes, sir?" "I need you to find out everything you can about a girl who works at our mall's supermarket." "All right. What's her name?" Henry paused. "I don't know." Thomas hesitated. "That will be difficult, sir. I will need her first name at least." Henry exhaled. "Tomorrow morning I'll find out her name myself." Soon his driver arrived, and as the car pulled away, Henry looked back once more. And deep down, he knew this wasn't about business anymore. Something in him had changed. The following morning was a blur for Henry as he couldn't wait to leave his office and go to the supermarket. The minute he was done with the files he needed to sign at the office, he quickly took his keys and drove to the supermarket. He wasn't dressed like a CEO. No driver, no assistant. Just him. His heart beat a little faster than usual. He'd practiced what to say, how to keep it simple, how not to seem strange. But now that he was here, now that he saw her again, he felt unsure. There she was, standing behind the counter, typing something into the till. Her apron was neatly tied, and her hair pulled back as always. She looked just as he remembered, calm, focused, and kind, without even trying. He picked up a cold bottle of water from the fridge and walked slowly to the counter. When their eyes finally met, something shifted. Olivia looked up and froze for half a second, not out of fear or discomfort, but with the subtle surprise of seeing a stranger who felt oddly familiar. "Good morning," he said, voice lower than he intended. "Good afternoon, sir," she replied with a polite smile, taking the bottle from him and scanning it. Henry reached into his pocket ready to pay but froze. His wallet was not there. His heart skipped. Oh no. He checked again, quickly, nothing. He had changed clothes in a rush and left it in the other jeans. A wave of embarrassment swept over him. I'm so sorry," he said awkwardly. I forgot my wallet. I didn't mean to waste your time. He gently placed the bottle back on the counter and gave an apologetic nod. Please, don't worry about it. He turned to walk away. Wait. Olivia's voice stopped him. He turned around slowly. Take it, she said softly. Don't worry about the money, it's just water. No, really, you don't have to. But she was already reaching into her small handbag. Without hesitation, she took out some coins and slid them into the cash drawer. It wasn't dramatic, just quiet and sure. I insist, she said, smiling slightly. It's just water. Henry stared at her. This girl. This young woman, who probably needed every penny she could get. He didn't know whether to smile or feel ashamed. I'm Henry, he said finally, his voice a little steadier. Nice to meet you. She looked at him for a moment, then smiled back. Olivia, a name he wouldn't forget. He took the bottle gently, their fingers brushing slightly as she handed it to him. Thank you, Olivia, he said, almost shyly. You're welcome, Henry, she replied. And then he did something he hadn't done in a long time. He blushed. He left the store with a warm, quiet smile on his face, water bottle in hand, but his head full of questions. Was he already falling for her? The moment he stepped outside, he pulled out his phone. Thomas, he said as soon as his assistant picked up. Yes, sir? Remember the girl I told you about yesterday? The supermarket staff? I wanted you to check. Of course. Any update? Her name is Olivia, Henry said softly. Send me whatever you find before the day runs out. Thomas replied. Got it. I'll get on it right away. Henry put the phone away and took a deep breath, glancing back through the glass doors of the supermarket. He didn't know where this would lead, but he knew one thing for sure. He wanted to find out. By midday, Henry's phone buzzed with a message from Thomas. He stepped away from his desk at Brown Group headquarters, sat in the quiet corner of his office, and opened the file Thomas had just sent. Name, Olivia Okoro. Age, 25. Position, supermarket staff floor assistant. Employed 5 months ago. Known for punctuality, hard work, calm nature. Family, lives with her mother, Rose Okoro, reportedly unwell. Father, deceased. Olivia is primary caregiver and sole breadwinner. Henry read through the words slowly. Now he understood. The long walk, the worn-out shoes, the small crumbling house, the tired smile. She wasn't careless. She was surviving. Not just for herself, but for her mother, without help, without complaints. And somehow, through it all, she had still reached into her own tiny pocket to help someone else. Henry leaned back in his chair, moved. He had met many people who gave when they had more than enough. But Olivia, she gave even when she had almost nothing. And she never asked for anything in return. The next morning, a quiet note was passed to the floor manager at the supermarket. Olivia was to be scheduled for slightly shorter shifts on alternating days to reduce her walking strain. A new meal voucher was quietly added to the staff file. Small things. Nothing loud, nothing flashy. But Henry made sure of it, anonymously. Top management decision. He didn't want to insult her pride. He just wanted to ease the burden. And still, he wanted more than that. So he kept visiting the supermarket. At first, just to say hello. Then slowly to share a few words. A laugh. A soft moment between shelves. And Olivia? She welcomed him kindly. She still didn't know who he was. To her, he was just Henry. The quiet, warm guy who passed through often. Some evenings after her shift, he'd walk with her for a little while before she turned onto the long road home. Not the whole way, he respected her space, but just enough to talk. They walked without rush, sharing little stories. She told him about her mother, about the quiet joy of watching her sleep peacefully after a good meal. She spoke of her father, how he used to call her Nurse Olivia, even before she ever said she wanted to be one. I always wanted to go back to school, she said one evening as they walked by the roadside. I wanted to be a nurse, help people who can't afford care, but life. Her voice trailed off, soft. Henry looked at her. But life can still surprise you, Olivia. She smiled faintly. I hope so. He admired her more with each passing day. Her honesty, her humility. Her strength didn't shout, but quietly stood tall no matter what. And slowly, without even realizing it, His heart began to open. The days passed gently, like quiet notes in a beautiful song. Henry and Olivia's friendship continued to blossom. He still showed up often, never dressed to impress, always calm, always kind. Sometimes he brought her roasted corn. Other times, just a smile and a listening ear. Olivia had started to look forward to his visits more than she admitted, even to herself. But someone else had started to take notice too. Lillian. She was one of Olivia's co-workers, sharp-tongued, easily irritated, and always watching. From the very first time she saw Henry walk into the store and head toward Olivia's section, her curiosity turned quickly to jealousy. Why her? Lillian wondered bitterly. What does she have that I don't? Why doesn't everyone seem to like her? She started watching them more closely. Every shared smile, every quiet word between shelves, every short walk after work. And soon, she had made up her mind. One afternoon, she marched straight to the manager's office. "Sir, I don't want to cause trouble," she began, folding her arms. "But I think you should know, Olivia has been chatting with some man during work hours. She neglects her duties sometimes, and it's becoming distracting." The manager, Mr. Paul, blinked in surprise. Olivia? Of all his staff, Olivia had never once been late, never missed a task, never raised her voice. She was the most well-behaved and respectful worker on the floor. Still, as a manager, he had to take every report seriously. Later that day, he called Olivia aside. "Olivia," he said gently, not angry, just cautious. "I just want to remind you to stay focused during your shift. You've always been a great worker. Just make sure nothing distracts you, okay?" Olivia nodded quickly, confused and slightly hurt. "Yes, sir, of course." She didn't ask who complained, but in her heart she had a feeling. Still, she said nothing. That evening, as she stepped out of the store, Henry was waiting near the corner with 2 sachets of chilled water in his hand. She smiled weakly. "You okay?" he asked, noticing the shift in her mood. She nodded. "Long day." They walked in silence for a few minutes. Then, Henry cleared his throat. "Olivia." She turned to look at him. "I don't know how to say this," he said, his voice softer now, more unsure than usual. "But I need to be honest with you. I really enjoy being around you. I think about you even when I'm not here. And I know I'm probably not the person you expected to get close to, but I like you. More than a friend." Olivia stopped walking. A soft breeze passed between them. She didn't speak right away. Henry scratched the back of his neck, nervous. "That probably sounds foolish." "No," she whispered, a shy smile breaking across her lips. "It doesn't sound foolish." He stepped closer, gently. "Can I walk you a little farther today?" She nodded. They walked in quiet peace, hearts beating differently now. As they reached the corner where Henry usually stopped, he hesitated. "I need to tell you something," he said suddenly. "The first day we met, it wasn't by accident. I'd seen you before. I followed you home once." Olivia turned, confused. "You what?" "Not in a bad way," he rushed to explain. I saw you help that old woman, and I was curious. Then I saw you walking such a long distance, alone. It stayed with me. I had to know why." Her eyes searched his face, unsure whether to be touched or alarmed. "But you didn't say anything?" "I didn't want to scare you," he said softly. I didn't know how to explain it without sounding strange. She looked at him for a long time, then slowly nodded. "Okay." "I'm sorry if that felt like too much." She gave a small smile. "I'm still here, aren't I?" They both laughed lightly. As they stood beneath the faint glow of a nearby streetlight, neither of them said it out loud. But something unspoken had begun between them. The following morning, Henry sat at his desk in the top-floor office of Brown Group headquarters, staring out at the city skyline. But his mind was somewhere else entirely. With Olivia. Every day he spent with her made his feelings grow deeper. Her laughter stayed in his chest, her words echoed in his heart, and yet, behind every sweet moment they shared, guilt followed closely behind. He hadn't told her the truth. She thought he was just a regular office worker barely scraping by. Just Henry. not the owner of the mall. Not the CEO of the company that signed her paycheck. The weight of it began to crush him. He wanted to do more for her, especially now that she was his girlfriend. She didn't like to ask for help, but he saw her pain the way she rubbed her legs when she thought no one was looking. He noticed the stiffness in her shoulders, the way she quietly avoided talking about how long her walk home really was. That night, he called Thomas. "I want to reward the most hard-working supermarket staff," he said, voice firm but low. "Send a modest car to the mall, something decent, clean, with a weekly fuel allowance." "Who should it go to, sir?" Thomas asked. "Let the staff and customers vote anonymously," Henry replied. "Just make sure it's fair." 3 days later, the votes were in. It wasn't even close. Olivia had won by a landslide. Customers remembered her kindness, staff praised her work ethic. Even the store manager said, "She's the best worker I've had in years." But not everyone was happy. Lillian, who had been silently watching Olivia's rise, couldn't bear it any longer. "She's not that special," she snapped to a group of co-workers. "You really think she's doing all this on her own? Please, she's sleeping with someone in management. That's how she's getting all this attention." The rumor spread quickly. Whispers followed Olivia through the aisles. "She's pretending to be innocent, but even the quiet ones know how to play the game." "Ah, and I thought she had a boyfriend already, you know? That's why that guy comes here so often." "So, she was sleeping with the manager, now she's getting a car for it?" Olivia kept quiet at first, but the stares, the murmurs, the growing coldness from people who used to smile at her, it began to hurt. Then, one afternoon, it exploded. Lillian walked into the store's break room, where Olivia was quietly folding her apron. In front of other staff, she scoffed loud enough for everyone to hear. "Must be nice," Lillian said with a bitter smirk, "using your body to climb your way up. So how many managers have you smiled at to get that car?" The room fell silent. Olivia stood slowly, her eyes steady. Her heart pounded, but she didn't shake. "I'm not sleeping with anyone," she said clearly, her voice calm but firm. "And the only person I'm with is my boyfriend." Some of the staff raised their brows. "Boyfriend?" "Yes," Olivia continued. "His name is Henry, and he's not a manager. He's not some random guy I'm using. He's someone I care about. And I wouldn't trade him, not for a richer man, not for a fancy life. Because I believe in building together, not collecting handouts, despite what anyone may think." A few people nodded. Others looked away, ashamed. But unknown to everyone, someone else had just walked into the store. Henry. He had stopped by quietly, just in time to witness everything. He stood frozen behind a display stand, heart clenching at Olivia's words. She was defending him, without knowing the full truth. "She thinks I'm just Henry, a low-income earner who has nothing to offer," he thought painfully. "And still she chooses me." The guilt twisted deep in his chest. He couldn't hide anymore. He had to tell her who he really was, even if it risked everything. Over the next few days, the tension inside the supermarket grew thicker. The whispers hadn't stopped, and neither had Lillian. Despite Olivia's calm silence and gentle attitude, Lillian's jealousy only burned deeper. She couldn't stand the way Olivia still smiled, still worked hard, still walked with dignity, and most of all now had a car. And so one busy afternoon she decided to break her completely. It started as usual, Olivia restocking the fridge section, quietly humming under her breath, her apron slightly wet from the cold drinks she'd been arranging. Without warning, a cold splash hit her face. A full can of juice poured directly on her head. Gasps filled the aisle. Customers and staff alike turned in shock. Olivia stood frozen, sticky liquid dripping from her hair down her neck. Her hands trembled slightly, but she didn't move. Across from her, Lillian stood with a smirk. "Oops," she said coldly. "Sorry, my hand slipped." Olivia finally raised her eyes, and just as she opened her mouth to respond, a sharp voice cut through the silence. "That's enough." Henry. He had walked in moments earlier, planning to surprise Olivia with lunch. But now, his eyes were burning with quiet anger. He stepped forward and stood beside her, placing a gentle hand on her arm. Then he turned sharply to the crowd gathering around. "Call your manager and the floor supervisor, now." People moved quickly. Within moments, Mr. Paul and the supervisor were there, looking confused and worried. "I want to know," Henry said calmly but firmly, "why this kind of behavior is tolerated here. Why someone my staff can be humiliated publicly not once but repeatedly based on baseless gossip." Mr. Paul blinked. "Sir, I'm sorry, Your staff." Henry nodded, his eyes never leaving Lillian. "I'm Henry Brown," he said clearly, his voice echoing through the store. "Owner of this mall. CEO of Brown Group," he said as he stretched out his hand to give Mr. Paul his card. But he stepped back in fear. The room went dead silent. Some gasped. Others dropped their baskets. Even Lillian's mouth hung open, her hand still clutching the empty can. But Henry wasn't finished. "This woman you mock," he said, gesturing gently toward Olivia, who stood frozen, juice still soaking her shirt. "She's the most selfless person I've ever met, the kind of person who would give up her lunch for a stranger, even when she hasn't eaten all day herself." His voice softened slightly. "And yes, she loved me. She chose me when she thought I had nothing. She accepted me thinking I was just a regular guy with no money, no title, no power. She saw me, not what I could give her." Several staff nodded slowly. Even Mr. Paul's eyes turned toward Olivia, filled with something close to guilt. But Olivia, she didn't move. She was frozen, eyes wide, heart pounding. Henry's words rang in her ears. "Henry Brown, CEO, owner of the mall." Her Henry. The same Henry who smiled gently, who walked her home, who listened to her dreams and laughed at her little jokes. She shook her head, overwhelmed. Without a word, she turned and ran, juice still dripping from her sleeves, apron clinging to her skin. "Olivia!" Henry called, chasing after her. She pushed through the glass doors of the mall, heart thudding wildly, tears burning her eyes. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to get away. Henry finally caught up with her just outside the gate. "Olivia, please," he said breathlessly. "Let me explain." She turned, face soaked with tears now, not juice. "You lied to me. I never meant to—" "No," she snapped, voice trembling. "You followed me. You watched me. You let me pour my whole heart out to someone I thought I could trust, all while hiding who you really were." Henry's face dropped. "I was afraid. I didn't want to lose you." "Then you should have been honest," she cried. "What was this, Henry? Was it pity? Was I just another charity case to make you feel good about yourself?" "No, never." But she had already turned away, her feet moving faster. "Olivia, please." She didn't look back. He stood there alone, under the same sun that had once watched them walk side by side. And now, it watched her walk away. Morning came quickly. Olivia had barely slept. The night before played in her mind over and over. Henry's voice, the stares from the staff, the moment he said, "I'm Henry Brown." She sat on the edge of her bed, her hands still for a long time. Maybe I should resign, she thought. After all that had happened, the humiliation, the whispers, the truth, maybe it was best to walk away. But then she looked over at her mother. Mama Rose lay curled on the thin mattress, her breathing soft, her hands resting gently on her chest. She had woken up a few times during the night to check on Olivia, but said nothing, just gave her a knowing, quiet look. Work wasn't easy to find, and quitting because of emotions wouldn't help them survive. Mama's medicine wasn't going to pay for itself. So, with a heavy sigh, Olivia stood up, got dressed, and tied her hair back. She tucked in her blouse, straightened her apron, and wore her most practiced smile. "Going already?" Mama Rose asked gently. "Yes, Mama. You didn't eat much last night." "I'll eat something later," Olivia lied. Mama Rose didn't press. She simply nodded and whispered, "God go with you." When Olivia walked into the supermarket that morning, something felt different. People greeted her more politely than usual. Some smiled too quickly. Others avoided eye contact entirely. Even the floor manager came over to ask how she was doing, not in his usual brisk tone, but softer, like walking on eggshells. It felt strange, like everyone was trying not to say what they were really thinking. Then, as she was arranging canned goods, she heard a quiet voice behind her. "Olivia." She turned. Lillian. Her eyes were downcast, her tone completely different from before. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she mumbled. For everything I said, everything I did, I was wrong. Please forgive me. Olivia looked at her for a long moment. She could have shouted, she could have walked away. But instead, she just nodded once. Okay. Lillian blinked, surprised by the grace. Thank you, she whispered and walked away. The rest of the day passed quietly. Customers came and went. The usual rhythm returned. But Olivia's heart still beat differently. When her shift ended, she stepped outside only to find Henry leaning against the same spot where they used to talk. His hands were in his pockets. He looked nervous. Hi, he said gently. She gave a small nod. Hi. I was hoping we could talk. She didn't say no. They walked to the corner, away from the crowd. I came to return the car, she said, not looking at him. I can't keep it. Henry's eyes widened. Please don't. It doesn't feel right. You didn't take it. You earned it. Everyone voted for you. You've worked harder than anyone. You're kind. You're honest. That car wasn't a gift. It was a thank you, and you earned it through your hard work. She looked at him, her eyes softening just a little. Henry, she began. I'm sorry, he said quickly, for hiding the truth, for letting you love someone without giving you the full picture. I never meant to lie, I was afraid. Afraid that once you knew who I really was, you'd see me differently. Or leave. She was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, she stepped forward. I forgive you, she whispered. He looked up, surprised. But from now on, she said gently, resting her head on his shoulder, no more secrets. If we're going to do this, really do this, we tell each other everything. He nodded, tears forming in his eyes. No more secrets, he repeated. She smiled. Whether you're just Henry or Henry Brown, I love you. Henry pulled her into a quiet hug, wrapping his arms around her like he never wanted to let go. I love you more, he whispered. And for the first time since he had revealed his identity, the world felt right again. The days that followed felt like something from a quiet, beautiful dream. Olivia and Henry, no longer hiding, no longer unsure, grew even closer. Their walks were filled with deeper conversations now. Laughter came easier, and the silence between them was no longer heavy, but warm. Henry had never felt this way before. And Olivia, despite everything they had been through, she felt safe with him. One evening, as they sat under the soft glow of a streetlight outside the supermarket after her shift, Henry reached into his bag and handed her a small envelope. What's this? She asked, puzzled. Just open it. Inside was a neatly printed admission form from a reputable nursing school, with her name already typed at the top. Olivia blinked, reading it twice. I made a few calls, Henry said quietly. You said you wanted to go back to school someday. Well, what if someday was now? She looked at him, eyes wide. Henry, it's your dream. Let's bring it to life. She held the form gently in her hands, as though it might tear under the weight of emotion. Then she looked up, smiling softly. I'm not Cinderella, you know. He smiled back. I know. I'm serious. Just because I'm dating a billionaire doesn't mean I want a life where everything is handed to me. I still want to work. I still want to earn things for myself. Henry nodded slowly, admiration shining in his eyes. And I wouldn't want you any other way. Their fingers intertwined, and with each passing day, love wrapped itself around them like sunlight through morning windows. A week later, Henry asked Olivia to take a ride with him. Where are we going? She asked curiously. You'll see, he said with a smile. They drove quietly, past the buzz of town, into a peaceful area filled with tall trees and flowering bushes. Finally, they arrived at a private garden, luxurious but calm, like something out of a storybook. The grass was soft. A fountain bubbled gently in the background, The air smelled like jasmine. Olivia stepped out slowly, looking around in awe. Wow. Before she could say more, she turned to find Henry kneeling in front of her, an open ring box in his hand. Her heart skipped. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," he said softly. "I want to spend forever with you, Olivia. Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes, spilling quietly down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Henry. 1,000 times, yes." He stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a long, trembling hug. That weekend, Henry visited Olivia's home. Mama Rose sat outside in her plastic chair, waiting, her wrapper tied neatly and her hands folded on her lap. A soft smile lit her face as they approached. Henry walked forward with quiet respect. "Good afternoon, Ma." "Afternoon," she said calmly, studying him. "I wanted to come properly," he continued, "to thank you, and to ask for your blessing, Ma. We're hoping to begin wedding plans." At first, Mama Rose nodded slowly. But then her smile began to fade. Her eyes sharpened, looking past Henry and into the space between them. "Your full name again, young man?" "Henry Brown," he said with pride. "Son of—" "Brown," she repeated slowly, her voice suddenly cold. "Son of Chief Kenneth Brown?" Henry blinked, caught off guard. "Yes, that was my father." Mama Rose stood up slowly, as if the name had knocked the wind out of her. Olivia turned, confused. "Mama? You didn't know?" Mama Rose asked softly, her voice trembling now. "Kenneth Brown, your father, was the one who destroyed our lives." Henry's face paled. "What?" Mama Rose's voice hardened with pain. "Years ago, your father and his company came to our village. They claimed they needed land to build malls and offices, said it would bring development. But what they brought was loss." Olivia's heart began to race. "Our farmland. Your father's men took it. Our people protested peacefully, and they arrested my husband. He fell ill in that dirty cell. The shame, the stress, the helplessness, it killed him." She looked straight at Henry now, her eyes burning. "Marco Coro, that was my husband. Olivia's father." Henry opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He was stunned, completely unprepared for the weight of his father's actions. Olivia turned toward him slowly, her face a mix of heartbreak and horror. "Is this true?" she whispered. Henry swallowed hard. "Olivia, I didn't know. But your name." She stepped back from him. "You're his son. The son of the man who ruined my family." "No, please," he said, stepping forward. "I swear I didn't know. If I had—" "You should have," Olivia said, her voice cracking. "You should have known what your family did.
All this time you were the one person I trusted. And now—" Henry's heart was breaking, but he didn't argue. He couldn't. Not when he was just now realizing the weight of his father's legacy. "Mama," Olivia said softly, without looking away from Henry, "please ask him to leave." Mama Rose was quiet for a moment, then gave a small nod. Henry turned slowly, pain carved into every part of his face. He didn't fight, didn't beg. He just walked out the same gate he had entered only minutes before, his steps slow and silent. Olivia stood frozen, her eyes full of tears. The man she loved was the son of the man she could never forgive. And in that moment, her world collapsed again. Later that night, Henry sat alone in his study, the once welcoming walls of his penthouse apartment now feeling cold and distant. Papers covered the table, old contracts, faded blueprints, signed letters and sealed envelopes from over a decade ago. He had spent days digging, going through every record his late father left behind. And there it was, in the middle of a dusty folder titled Rural Acquisition 12B, a set of blueprints stamped and signed by Chief Kenneth Brown, land parcel maps, mall construction phases, legal clearance letters, and a familiar name at the corner of the land ledger. Okoro family marked for release and compensation hold. But the word compensation had been scratched out in red ink. Henry's stomach turned. His father hadn't just taken the land.
He had made sure families like Olivia's got nothing in return. They were erased, forgotten, and abused. His chest tightened with every new page. No wonder Olivia looked at me like I was a stranger. Meanwhile, Olivia lay curled on her bed at home, the curtains drawn shut, her apron untouched in the corner of the room. She had stopped going to work. She couldn't walk into that place anymore. Not when the whispers might return. Not when her heart couldn't take pretending everything was okay. Mama Rose tried to check in, bringing her warm tea and soft food, but Olivia barely touched any of it. The pain was too loud. One evening, a soft knock came at the gate. Olivia peeked through the curtain and saw him, Henry, standing alone. No car, no driver, just him. She stepped outside slowly. He looked tired, worn, but his eyes searched hers with nothing but sorrow. "Olivia," he said gently, "please." She didn't speak. I went through everything. My father's records, his files, I saw the documents, the land plans. He did everything you said and worse. She blinked fast, trying not to cry again. "I didn't know," Henry continued, "but now I do. And I swear to you, I will do something about it. I can't change what he did, but I can try to make things right. I need you to believe me." Olivia's voice came low and cracked. "You're part of the family that took everything from us." Henry stepped back, hurt. "I know, and I'm sorry." Her shoulders dropped. "I loved you," she whispered. "And somehow, I still do. But love can't fix this. My father died with nothing. My mother watched our life disappear. Every step I took to that supermarket was because of what your father did to us." Henry swallowed hard. "I understand," he said, tears in his eyes. "If you need space, if you need to let me go, I'll accept it. But please know, no matter what, I will carry your pain like it's mine. You're not alone." There was silence between them. Then Olivia shook her head slowly. "We can't do this, Henry. Not now. Maybe not ever." The words hit him like a wave. He nodded slowly, unable to speak. "I'm sorry," she whispered, turning back toward the house. He watched her go, each step like a closing door in his heart. And that night, Olivia lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as tears rolled down the sides of her face. She didn't cry because she hated him. She cried because despite everything, she still loved him. The following week, Henry stood quietly at the edge of the community square, the same community his father had forcefully collected their lands. The morning sun casting long shadows across the faces of men, women, and children who had gathered to hear what the big man from town had to say. But today, he wasn't standing as a big man. He was standing as a son of the very man who had torn apart this land, and the people who once thrived on it. The village had changed since Henry first saw it on a map. Fewer farmlands now, more abandoned homes, tired eyes behind every welcome. It was no longer the place Olivia described in her stories of childhood joy. It was a scarred version of what it once was. Henry looked around, took a slow breath, and stepped forward. The local council chairman cleared his throat. "Everyone, this is Henry Brown." He asked to speak. Henry nodded once and raised the microphone with steady hands. "My name is Henry Brown," he began, his voice calm but clear. "I am the son of Chief Kenneth Brown, the man responsible for the land acquisition that happened here years ago." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I was a boy when it happened," he continued, "but that does not excuse me. I may not have known what my father did back then, but I live today enjoying the wealth his actions helped create, and because of that, I owe you more than just an apology." The crowd was silent now, listening. "My parents died in a car crash years ago. They are not here to answer for what they did, but I am. And as their son, I feel it is my duty to not just say sorry, but to make things right." He paused, emotion rising in his chest. "I have begun a village restoration project. I've already returned the unused plots that were taken under false pretenses. A cooperative is being built in the name of a man I never met, but whose story broke me, Mark Okoro. Your son, your neighbor, your brother." Gasps ran through the audience. The new community center is under construction. A local education fund will be set up for your children. Health outreach programs will follow. And most importantly, every job created will go to this village first. This is not charity. This is justice. He looked up, locking eyes with the elders. I cannot erase the past, but I will not walk through the future pretending it doesn't exist. As he stepped back, the entire square remained quiet. But slowly, hands began to clap. Then more. Until the applause swelled into something powerful, like the breaking of a long-held silence. Miles away, in the quiet of her room, Olivia sat with her phone pressed tightly in her hand. Her friend, Amaka, had sent the video with a short message. You need to see this. At first, Olivia wasn't sure she wanted to, but something in her heart pushed her to press play. And there he was. Henry, speaking not as a CEO or a proud man, but as a son asking for forgiveness, not hiding behind titles, not blaming anyone else, owning it and offering healing. As she watched him speak of her father, Mark Okoro, her throat tightened. When he mentioned the land, the jobs, the center, and how he was building it all in her father's name, her tears finally fell. She wiped them away, unsure what to feel. She was moved, but also afraid. Could she trust it? Could love really grow again from such broken roots? She didn't know, but something in her heart stirred, something soft, and still beating. The video ended, but Olivia sat there long after the screen went black. Henry's voice echoed in her heart, the way it broke slightly when he said her father's name, the way he didn't hide behind excuses or pride. She remembered everything. How he had walked with her after long shifts. How he had made her laugh on days she wanted to cry. How he had listened, not just to her words, but to her silences. He hadn't known the past. He had never tried to hurt her, and if anything, he had done more to heal her wounds than anyone ever had. He wasn't his father. He never had been. Still, doubt lingered in the corners of her heart, until Mama Rose entered the room. Her mother sat beside her, holding her hand. You've been quiet all day, Mama Rose said gently. Are you still thinking about him? Olivia nodded, her eyes misty. I don't know what to do, Mama. Part of me is still hurt, but I still love him. Mama Rose exhaled slowly, her grip on her daughter's hand tightening just a little. You know, she began, when I first heard that name, Brown, I wanted to throw him out myself. I thought, how dare he come here? But I've watched you cry, Olivia.
And I've watched him try. She paused, her voice softer now. None of us can change the past. Not me, not him. But we can choose what to carry into the future. Hate. It's too heavy. It will break you if you hold it too long. Olivia blinked, silent. He's not his father, Mama Rose said, and you're not a prisoner to pain. 2 days later, a gentle knock came at the gate. Henry stood there alone, no fancy car, no guards, just a man with tired eyes and hope in his heart. Olivia stepped out quietly. He didn't move closer. I'm not here as a CEO, he said. I'm not here to talk about the past. I just want to say, I'm sorry. And if nothing else, I hope we can be friends again. He turned, ready to leave if she said nothing. But Mama Rose, watching from the doorway, gave her daughter the smallest nod. And Olivia stepped forward. Wait. Henry turned slowly. I forgive you, she said, her voice steady. Not because you're rich, not because of the schools or the land, but because you chose to walk with me through pain. You never ran, you stood. Henry's eyes filled instantly. I still love you, she said, voice barely above a whisper. And I don't want to keep walking without you. Henry closed the space between them, gently taking her hands in his. I love you more, he breathed. From the doorway, Mama Rose smiled through quiet tears. You're not your father, she said softly. What matters is who you choose to become. 6 months later. The wedding was quiet, just family, a few close friends,
and the community that had once watched Olivia walk 20 miles every day to survive. The village square was filled with laughter, flowers, and soft music. Olivia wore a simple gown, her natural curls pinned back with gold pins shaped like leaves. Henry stood at the altar, eyes never leaving her. As they exchanged vows under the clear blue sky, Olivia held his hands and said with a smile, "True love doesn't come in a car. Sometimes it walks 20 miles to find you." The guests rose in applause. Mama Rose wiped tears from her eyes, and Henry whispered, "I would walk it 1,000 times, just to find you again." They sealed it with a kiss, gentle, quiet, and full of everything they had survived. Love, after all, had found its way home.